I'm fully aware that it were two packed days, two very interesting days, that I'm standing between you and the closing remarks and the time to go back to your loved ones. I myself, it's a conference on education. I will have to go and get my children from school soon, so don't worry, I won't be talking for a very extended period of time. My children are in a public school, probably one of the closest schools from the building where we find ourselves now, with a large proportion of immigrant origin children that perfectly correspond to the notion of extended schools. And I would like to mention that in contradiction to the very gloomy picture that was sketched of public schools in the Brussels or Belgium context, that is a good functioning school, as luckily there are a lot of them. But I'll come back to this comment, but I felt it is important to stress to not end this day with a negative note on schools, and particularly public schools in Belgium. Now, we started off with the Europe 2020 agenda, where the goal is to have smart, sustainable and inclusive growth. And education is a prime instrument in having to achieve this smart, sustainable, inclusive growth. And the facts and figures today are interpelling. We had the presentations by the representative of the OECD, who reminded us of the PISA results, and the conclusion for several Western European countries is that at this moment we are simply wasting human capital. Our educational systems are not working as social elevators anymore. They are not assuring social mobility and meritocracy as they should. In fact, they are reproducing social inequality and in some cases reinforcing social inequality. And it are particularly working class youngsters and in addition ethnic minority youngsters who are the victims of this process. Now, luckily enough, there are a lot of parents, a lot of teachers, a lot of pupils who are proving on a daily basis that we don't have to be fatalistic. And one of the schools you've been visiting, or some of you have been visiting yesterday, is a prime example of that. But we should indeed face the facts that overall, if you look at the statistics, the situation is not well. We have a big gap between immigrant origin pupils and pupils without an immigrant background, even when controlling for socio-economic status. But also amongst pupils without an immigrant background, there are high levels of social inequality which keep on being reproduced. And to give you just one figure, which in my opinion tells a lot, if we look at a higher educated mom and compare the educational chances of her child with a mother that does not have a degree of secondary education, the higher educated mom, her child has seven times more probability to have a higher education degree than the child of a mother who did not finish secondary education. In a meritocratic society where intelligence is distributed in an even way amongst all social groups, this is simply unacceptable. And these are the figures that with which we are confronted today. Now, we had some debate during the conference about normalization and measurement. Should everyone reach the same level? What about finding this balance between diversity and equal opportunities? Are we not all different? Why should we all achieve the same standards? Well, I think in the debate we should clearly distinguish there, and that popped up during our discussions, that there is a minimum standard necessary for whatever child we are confronted with. You do not want to lower boundaries with regard to expectancies of mastery of language, with regard to expectancies of basic mathematical skills, basic science skills, and basic creativity skills. So a minimum threshold has to be assured. And there also the figures tell us that in a country like Belgium, at this point in time, 35% of pupils with an immigrant background do not reach the minimal standard at 15 years old as fixed by the OECD. They can read, they can count, but as pupils they will have a very hard time to function as citizens in the society in which they live, and they will have a very tough time to find a job, a good position on the labor market. Other societies, we had a colleague of Finland presenting the Finnish case, other societies like Finland are capable of assuring equal opportunities, well, not just equal opportunities, but a minimal threshold of knowledge to a far bigger group of pupils in society. And that should always be an objective. A school is to educate children, and it is unacceptable to have the idea that there would be good schools and bad schools. Every school should be a good school. Now, beyond this, we can discuss beyond this minimal level, where should pupils end up? Now, not everyone has to go to university. And unfortunately, in our societies today, there is a negative stigma on vocational training compared to academic training. I often try to explain my students and people I have the opportunity to talk to that this is a fundamental flaw looking at how our society works, and that even if you would take money as a criterion, that probably my plumber and my electrician on a monthly basis earn as much as I do as a university professor. So that it is a bit silly that so many people from a middle class background or who have aspirations to have upward mobility to associate this uniquely with getting into higher education. Now, what is true is that people should follow their heart and their talents in education, in the schooling system. And there we see that a number of systematic changes are needed, a number of structural changes are needed. The OECD data clearly show where focal problems are to be found. The first one is early tracking, and there I come back to my example of the plumber or the university professor. If in the transition from primary education to secondary education, at the age of 12, immediately a choice has to be made for a more academic-oriented career or a more vocational training career, you get the reproduction of social inequality. Working class kids opt more often or are sent more often to vocational training. Middle class pupils or elite pupils are put by their parents in general education, and one tries to keep them there at whatever it takes to keep them in this level of education. That is not a very smart way to proceed, as then we have negative choices with regard to school orientation. In the Belgian system, the informal hierarchy is that if you are among the best students, you go to do Latin, Greek, or mathematics, sciences. If that doesn't work out, then maybe you try social sciences. If that doesn't work out, you go into technical training. If that doesn't work out, you go into vocational training, which is a negative choice for the school orientation you find yourself in. This should be broken up and shift from an early choice at the age of 12, early tracking, to a later stage, 15 years old, 16-year-old, make sure that pupils are able to discover for themselves where their talents are. That can be more technical, it can be more academic track, and do not make a decision already at the age of 12, which will determine most probably a big part of the rest of their life at the moment when it is really too early to do so. Now, luckily, a lot of educational systems are moving in this direction. Poland did it 10 years ago with a very impressive success rates. It is on the policy table in Flanders. This is a building where these kinds of decisions are being prepared and made. Let's hope that the practical issues and hidden political games in trying not to make this policy change go further, that they will not prevent of actually making a step forward. And on a personal note, working for the Francophone community in Belgium, I hope that on Francophone side one will also open up this debate and realize that a number of structural steps are to be taken there. Another issue of which we know there is a structural need for change is the issue of socioeconomic segregation and ethnic segregation. Actually, it's mainly about socioeconomic segregation, because if you have ethnic segregation, that has been proven by in many research projects, the real fundamental crux is that there is socioeconomic differences in the school population from one school to another. Now, this necessitates courageous policies where you give up the freedom of parents to choose their own schools if you want to assure a real social mix across the school market. Now, this is politically very difficult. This is ideologically also debatable to a certain extent. Then the only alternative is to think about alternative allocation of school resources. My colleague Ides Nissese stressed it. We want to avoid, of course, teachers have to develop their capacities and have to use their talents in all schools. And teachers are important in all schools. But we have to assure that our most talented, most motivated, strongest teachers find themselves in those schools where their skills are the most needed. And today this does not seem to be the case. The schools which are confronted with most of the challenges have a high turnover level of teaching staff, have a difficulty of creating a continuity in policy. We cannot really blame it on the teachers because they earn exactly the same amount in whatever type of school they are working in. But there, as a society, as stakeholders, we have to make a choice. We cannot go on accepting having an educational system like this which fails to be genuinely meritocratic, which fails to assure giving equal opportunities. Now, we've been talking about the systemic structural changes that are necessary. We've been talking about best practices like the mentoring projects, intercultural teacher education initiatives, and the very interesting grassroots initiatives of schools that are being created by local communities, and in this case, ethnic minority community, although I know that Adem Kumchu, amongst others, and rightly so, stresses that we should maybe go away from this phrasing in talking about migrants and ethnic minorities, but talk in a more positive and more correct way also about new Europeans who are taking their responsibilities. Now, this, as you have seen, is a unique conference on education. It's not your standard academic conference or policy-making conference where you all have 50-plus-year-old gray male professor sitting at the table and talking about how society should function or does not function. Just in the diversity of the people that talked today and yesterday was already a reflection of how our societies are changing and how also these kinds of conferences are changing. Although there I must say that change doesn't go rapidly enough, and that's why I say this is a unique one and a very nice experience to see that we had a very high quality level of debate being combined with the reflection of diversity along different criteria. One of the mantras that came back several times was learn from migrants, not only teach them. And we talked about the positive image that is necessary around diversity, around new Europeans, and I would like to congratulate Fedactio with a very, very voluntaristic perspective that they take here in organizing this conference, but also in the initiatives they've developed with other partners around the schools. And there I would particularly also like to highlight the importance of the Turkish entrepreneurs who are giving back to society or giving back to community, but not just giving back to their own community, but giving back to society at large, which is a remarkable thing and which is really worth stressing. Also very interesting to hear an entrepreneur being critical about the invisible hand of the market. That is also a very enlightening and refreshing thing to hear. Now, I would want to end here with stressing some of the challenges of these own grassroots school initiatives. Challenges to dangers. Although I think that the organization of the conference itself is already an answer to these dangers. I see two potential dangers. The first one is what they call in the jargon cream skimming. That these schools are created, and we already heard the word elite school being created for a particular minority, which will attract those pupils of those parents who already are willing and involved and find education important. And we should take care of not creating two tracks there within communities that you want to help out and have patterns of outreach. I think this is one thing we should continuously keep in mind to avoid. It's important to stress success, to stress challenges, to stress excellence. And I think this is also an important message given by this conference. Let's not just talk in a defeatist way about the challenges with regard to migrant inclusion and education, but show the positive effects and the success stories, and they are really there. We've seen them, but there's the danger of cream skimming. The other challenge is that from a policy-making point of view, and there I come back to the little debate that we had on public schools or the schooling systems in general in Belgium, but also broader in Europe, we should take care that these grassroots initiatives, like those developed in the Lucenna colleges and École des Étoiles, are not being used as excuses to not undertake structural change more generally in the educational system. In saying, okay, if there are problems, then these niche groups can, look, they can cater for themselves, they are taking initiatives. I would not step in this trap. But I think you did an excellent job in organizing this conference, because you take it beyond the initiative of just showing what grassroots initiatives in educational policy making are doing, but also formulating very clear demands, at least having a very clear debate on what is necessary on a more structural level in our educational system at large. And there I come back to the points of fighting segregation, of catering for extended schools, and making sure that the logic of early tracking is being broken. So I would like to end here and really profoundly congratulate the organizers of Fedactio for doing this brilliant job. Thank you.